This is Johan Janssens, back from Southeast Asia, and well, jet lag almost over. I enjoyed it very much over there, and in this podcast, you can hear all about my adventures.
Well, adventures is the word. If you call Volcano exploring, having a close encounter of the hot curry kind, and almost witnessing the arrest of Spider-Man. That's Jinx and his adventures in Southeast Asia. I'm your host, Peter Russell, and this is Joomla Juice episode 11. Johan, welcome to Joomla Juice once again. Great to have you back.
Hi, Pete.
Sounds like you had a good time.
I did. I had an excellent time.
So, let's start at the beginning. What was the flight like? How long did it take to get from Brussels to... It was Manila, wasn't it, initially?
Yeah. To get there, it was quite long. I think in total with the stops, I had 2 stops, one in Frankfurt and one in Kuala Lumpur. It took me about 28 hours, I think, something like that.
Wow. So how did you feel at the end of that?
Not that good, actually.
Yeah.
It was kind of strange because you're flying into Asia, and we left very early in the morning, or I left very early in the morning. And each time you land somewhere, some people are wishing you good morning. So I landed in Frankfurt and it was morning, and I landed in Kuala Lumpur and it was morning again.
So you had one really long day.
Very long day.
So no aspirations of becoming a long-haul airline pilot then?
Not really.
Not as glamorous as people might make out.
No, I don't find it a very glamorous job. They do an excellent job, these pilots, but it's not so glamorous to fly so long.
So you had quite an interesting trip and quite an itinerary. I mean, you were in the Philippines, and that was in Manila, and you did a conference there which involved FOSS, and you also, after that, you travelled to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and they were having a Joomla day. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. Actually, what happened was the project got an invitation from the IPD, which is the Institute for Popular Democracy in the Philippines, and they were doing a conference on e-governance, which is the conference I attended, and the conference was a wrap up of a year project they had worked on. It was a project funded by the European Union. The IPT is a non-profit, by the way. And
so let me jump in there. How does the European Union have a relationship with the Philippines?
The European Union has a large presence in the Philippines. There are a lot of different projects the European Union is funding in the Philippines. The Philippines is a third world country, and there are a lot of different projects where the European Union is involved in, and this is one of them. The conference was also attended by the chancellor, or I'm not sure what his exact name was, but the representative for the European Union in the Philippines.
Okay, so it's something like an ambassador.
And an ambassador, yeah.
Okay. So the European Union's, in this case, were they funding things that were specific to open source? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, exactly. They were funding the IPD to work on the implementation of FOSS, free and open source software, in local governments. That was the drive behind the 1 year project. And the IPD has selected 10 local governments, or as they call them, municipalities, to work with them and implement FOSS software in their local infrastructure.
Very interesting, because you wouldn't have had a language problem, would you? The Philippine people mostly speak English.
Yeah, they mostly speak English, and it's very funny because when they are speaking their local language and they don't know the exact word in that language, they use English. So even if they're speaking the local language, you could almost follow the conversation because there are always going to be some words in English in it.
Yeah, I've got some friends in Singapore, and they do insert words that at certain times, and it becomes really funny, actually. them trying to work me out and me trying to work them out.
It was great because they took the time to when I was present in the sessions or I was present at the conversation, they almost immediately switched to English.
Very good.
They're very fluent in it.
So when you describe a third world country, is it I mean, you don't sort of visualize this as Philippines being a poor country, but is that the case? Or is it just lack of resources?
I think, well, I didn't see the rest of the Philippines. I saw Manila, which is the biggest city. So based on that, you basically see what I saw, what my experience was, that you see a city that is growing at a pace that is too fast. It cannot keep up with itself. There is a lot of modernization going on. There are a lot of, for example, we went to a shopping mall and there are very big shopping malls over there. There are Starbucks and everywhere. So it's not what you would call a very poor country. That's not true. But at one side of the street, you might find a very modern shopping complex, and then a block down, you still find very poor suburbs where people are living on the street. So it's all very close to each other.
So how can open source help in the Philippines in a way that makes a difference?
In very interesting ways, and I learned a lot about the power of open source, especially in such a country. I already wrote it in my blog, but a very good example is there was a session given by a doctor, and he had created a very simple PHP program for nurses to use in hospitals to register babies. And that seems a very, very simple application, but it's very important for them because they had problems in the past in the Philippines distributing medicine, especially vaccines, to the right places in the country, because they had, for example, a large stock of vaccines somewhere in the country, and then they didn't know where they needed to send the vaccines to because they had no information or no data about where it was needed. So sometimes a lot of these stocks, they expired, and they were losing money on that. And of course, it's also a health problem because the babies are not getting the vaccines in time. So this doctor, he created a very simple PHP application, and he trained the hospital staff to work with it. And that basically starts from teaching them to work with a mouse. It's not that you give them a computer and you tell them, here is the application. You really need to start from the beginning, which is learning them to actually work with the computer, learning them what a mouse is, and making them accustomed to it so that they're not afraid of using it. And it works great because they now have data from different hospitals they are using, and they know when a baby is going to be born, they can have a bed available in the hospital. They know that 6 months later they need a certain vaccine. They know that 2 years later they need another vaccine. So it improves their healthcare a lot.
And so so that's an example of quality of life. What about students coming through, like university level? Are they involved?
Yeah. We had a training at the university, actually 2 days after the actual conference, which the organizers also put together, with the Filipino Joomla community, and they're very, very into open source.
Why is that?
I'm not sure. What I see in these universities is that there is not always enough budget to go with the commercial solution. So there is this natural drive to choose for open source solutions. Like PHP is a course that is taught at university. And they also get a little bit of Java. They work with most of the people there at the university I met. They're running open source Linux distributions like Ubuntu, and so it seems that because they have a limited amount of resources, open source is very naturally used as a solution for them.
And you turn up to the event with a MacBook Pro.
And I did turn up on the event with a MacBook Pro. I feel very bad about that.
These guys sound like they're really fired up. And how are they driving interest in open source? Are they doing it through forums, or is it sort of socially driven, person to person? How are they doing it?
It's very socially driven.
Yeah.
There are, and what I learned was that there are a lot of user groups. There are a lot of forums where people come together. Manila is considered the biggest SMS. Well, it's actually considered the SMS capital of the world.
They develop a lot of technology for that, do they?
Yeah, also, and they're constantly SMSing each other. So there is this. They're also very social because it's a warm country. People are living outdoors, meeting outdoors. So you immediately have that feeling that you're warmly welcomed, and people are also using technology to bring each other together.
Great. So apart from all the work stuff, did you do any fun stuff?
Yeah, sure. But I don't consider going there work. It's always a lot of fun to meet. Well,
let's call it networking with open source people.
Yeah.
Okay. So the fun stuff. Little Bird told me that you checked out a volcano.
Yeah, actually we did. Ray, who is our guide there, Ray is also a core team member, and he lives in Manila. He lives and works in Manila. He proposed to check out a local volcano, which was an hour drive from the city.
Yeah,
it's in a region called Tapatai, which is a very known region, and which was very interesting. We went down there. It's actually, the volcano is situated in a lake.
That's like a crater type volcano, was it?
Yeah. So you need to first cross the lake with a local boat. You need to find a guide to do that, and then we're at the other side. And actually, there's this small village, and they have small horses to help you to get up to the volcano. But we decided to walk. So it was 4 miles up to the volcano.
Yeah.
It took us an hour and a half or so.
Oh man,
it was very fun.
Yeah.
A lot of dust, of course, and then it's interesting because you arrive with the boat at the village, and then you have this welcoming committee of people that because there are new people coming in, and then they have these small things they want to sell you, and then they also have these masks for the dust that you can buy from them. And you need to register that you're going up to the volcano, and then you get a guide appointment, or you have a guide with you, and then you can go up.
Did the sulfur burn your eyes or your skin?
No, it was not that bad. Yeah. When we were up there, you could smell the sulfur, and you could also see it when you look down, but it was not that bad.
I was wondering whether we need to get an insurance policy on you going to these places.
I don't think so.
There's no danger it was going to blow up.
No, I asked them, and it seemed that the volcano was still active, so it was not he's dormant, but he has been he was active like 10 or 15 years ago. I'm not sure.
Because Southeast Asia. No, I don't think it was Philippines. It was a place called Krakatoa. Have you ever heard that name mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when it exploded, about people in Melbourne, in Australia, nearly 7,000 miles south, heard it. And I might be wrong on the mileage, but it was, it's the distance of Australia. People in Melbourne heard this explosion, and the entire island of what was Krakatoa was completely destroyed. And the world went into one of these extended winters because of all the dust, smoke, carbon that went into the air. And I don't know if you've ever seen the famous photographs, but that was around the period when the Thames in London was frozen. People were ice skating on it. So this concept about global warming, whether you agree with it or not, it's nature can certainly change things very dramatically, very quickly.
Absolutely.
So it's a good job you didn't go down there and experience something like that.
No, it was not that bad. It was actually quite nice because when we walked down from the volcano, there was a sunset. So we had our boat back to the shore.
I've seen some photographs. I mean, how many photographs can you take in a trip like that? Or more,
with a digital camera?
Or more accurately, how many photographs can you have taken of you?
In Asia, a lot, because people they seem to get born with a digital camera over there. They all have one. They are born with one. They all have one, and each time somebody brings one out, then it's photo time. So everybody starts posing together with 2, 3, or 4 people in a group, and then they switch cameras, and everybody needs to take a picture. So the moment you basically have someone take out a camera, you're busy for 5 or 10 minutes.
So did you feel like Brad Pitt on the red carpet?
Yeah, well, I'm not really. I'm not really used to all that, but it's a social thing they do. So at the beginning, I was not really. Yeah, it's a cultural difference. I wasn't really used to it, but on the second day, I was getting the hang of it. So I was playing a little bit.
I've seen a few of the photos. You looked like you had a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Did you get to take a few photos yourself?
Yeah. I have. I think I almost have 500 pictures that I took.
Great.
During those 2 weeks.
So from Manila, when you'd finished up and you had a few days to explore and say goodbye to your Filipino friends, you travelled to probably one of the most heavily built up cities in that part of the world, which is KL, or Kuala Lumpur. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the city with the massive twin towers and the connecting bridge between the two. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Kuala Lumpur Tower, the KL Tower.
Yeah.
Which is the 4th biggest tower in the world.
It's been used in quite a few movies, I think.
Yes.
One including Sean Connery, Entrapment or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, it was funny because when we were there and at a certain afternoon we were driving past the Twin Towers, the Petronas Towers they call them, and everybody was stopping. And we were like wondering what was going on. It was, and I was there at that time with Lee from Janssens. He was guiding me through the city at that day.
Yeah.
He lives and works there. And everybody was stopping at the towers, and we were wondering what was going on. And a few days later, I read on the internet that this guy who calls him the National Spider-Man or something.
Oh no.
He was trying to climb the Petronas Towers, and that caught him going up inside because he was trying to climb down or something like that.
So he didn't get his chance to play Spider-Man?
No, he didn't get his chance to play Spider-Man.
Darn.
Yeah, but we went to I didn't go to Petronas Towers and cross the bridge, but we went to the KL Tower, which is the 4th biggest tower in the world.
That's big. Is that bigger than the Twin Tower they've got there?
Yeah, it's bigger than the Twin Tower. And they have this. We actually wanted to go there for lunch because they have this revolving place where you can eat. It turns around, so you're sitting there and then you have the whole scenery because
like a revolving restaurant.
Yeah, it's a revolving restaurant.
So you sit at the window and the view keeps changing. Is that it?
Yeah, yeah. but unfortunately, it was completely booked for the coming months. So then we just went to there is also a deck where you can go to and just enjoy the scenery. And we went there, made some pictures. It was nice because you could see the whole city of Kuala Lumpur and all the buildings.
So the Joomla Day, which followed all that fun, so you had a decent crowd, or was it an intimate crowd?
It was actually an intimate crowd. It was a smaller Joomla Day. There were between 50 and 60 people, I think.
Yeah.
They were a little bit limited because they arranged for a smaller room, and eventually they had more people that were interested to come, and they needed to say no to them. But it was also fun because of the smaller room. There was just one track of sessions going on, and it was good because you could talk to all the people that were there during that day. It was more intimate and more social.
More photos?
Of course.
Oh yeah, the question I was going to ask you, I forgot, is how did your Belgian palate deal with Southeast Asian spicy food?
Well, Philippines was fine because I had good guides. We were actually there with two Europeans. Also, my friend my new friend from Bulgaria, Caroline.
Yeah.
And so we had good guides that were showing us around, and each time we were going to eat, we were both asking a lot of questions about what the food was and what was it like and how we wanted it. So we had a good time there, and the food in the Philippines is not so spicy. It's quite good. I quite enjoyed the food there. In Malaysia, it's a little bit different because there are also Indian influences. Curry and all that is very common there, and I'm not really accustomed to that.
I know. I've seen you tackle curry before, so
you have, did you?
I've seen you crying.
So, you need to be a little bit careful with what you take. And actually, at one night at the hotel, I went down for.
Do you have a close encounter with soup or something like that?
Yeah, to eat something, and I ordered myself a soup. It was. The menu said vegetable soup. Yeah. And it was vegetable soup. It was a very clear vegetable soup with big pieces of vegetable in it, which was great.
Well, chili peppers is vegetable.
Yeah, but that was not in there. It was like they put a whole bowl of pepper in it. I just looked at it. I was like, this is going to be good. And I started tasting it, and then I was going, I need more water. I think I drank a whole bottle of water while trying to eat the soup, and I stopped halfway.
Oh, it wouldn't stop you going back though.
No, of course not. Of course not.
So I don't want to make comparisons between Malaysia and Philippines, but overall, is there anything that stands out compared to the way open sources is used and spoken about in, let's say, Europe or America?
Yeah, well, I can only give an idea about the two cities I've been. I've been in Manila and I've been in Kuala Lumpur, which are the two major cities.
Yeah.
If you try to compare them, comparison is always difficult, of course. But what I felt was that in Malaysia there are more comparisons possible with what is going on in Europe. In Europe and in America. Open source is, people know what it is, people are working with it. There is this commercial an endeavor growing where people are creating services and support around it and are creating commercial solutions around open source. While in the Philippines, open source is very, very unknown. It's a big question mark. It's something that you could try to compare with what was happening like 10, 15 years ago here, 10 years ago here in Europe, where Linux was just coming up and people were still having a lot of questions about what it was and how it worked and what the principles behind it were. And you have that same thing going on in the Philippines. So most of what is going on there is a lot of advocacy and in very early stages.
Sounds exciting to be able to still experience that. I had some correspondents that suggested to me that South America probably sounds very similar at this point. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a place you should look at.
Maybe we do. I enjoyed the Philippines very much. We had a press conference where they wanted us to be present about e-governance, and the questions that were raised were very typical questions that were raised here a few years ago about open source. The typical question is, how secure is it, and how do you deal with the fact that the source code is openly available? Another very typical question is, where is the help desk? Because who do you call if you have a problem? You cannot call someone, right? Of course you can, but there are open source communities and there are forums you can go to, but there is not a direct phone number you can dial and have someone that is going to answer your question. So that were the very typical questions raised, which was interesting.
I don't know if you've heard it, but I spoke with Ryan. Aussie Mac last week on the podcast.
Yeah,
and
podcast.
He was talking about non-government organisations and dealing with objections, and the similar sorts, rather than questions, they're posed as objections in American environment, where people are so used to being surrounded by something they feel is going to provide them with all that support. But in reality, open source can often deliver faster turnaround than a proprietary one.
Yes.
So, but explaining that is a bit of a culture shift for people. So it's interesting. I guess what you're saying is the Philippines are no different to anywhere else in the early stages of adoption.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
No, they are not. They're coming from they're using it in a different way. They're because it at this point it's helping them a lot in their growth as a country, and most people that are trying to use open source are looking at it in that way, and it's used in that way.
Well, that's brilliant. And nice to catch up with you. Glad to see you got over the jet lag. You got any special messages you want to send your friends down there?
Well, there are those 4 people that I hanged out with during those days I was in the Philippines, and then to mention them, there is Bobby, who became a very good friend. He works for the Institute for Popular Democracy, and he basically guided us during the period I was there. And I heard from him a few days later, and he needed a whole weekend to recover, because it seems that having 2 Europeans over can be quite tiring. And then there's Caladan, who is the guy I met. He was the second European who was invited to come and talk about open source in the Philippines. He's a great guy, has a lot of humor, and we had a lot of fun preparing for our presentation together. And then the days after that, doing things together. He also has a blog out there, but it's in Bulgarian, so I'm not sure if people are going to be able to read it. But if you
send me the link.
Look up,
send me the link, and I'll put it on the site.
That's great. And then there's of course all the people from the IPD that organized the conference, and then for the Malaysia at Joomla Day, there's Lee, who showed me around, and during the time I was there, Lee from Janssens. Which is great because we've talked code a whole day.
Yeah.
and there is Azrael and Marissa who organized the Joomla Day.
Okay. Well, I'll provide links to all these people's sites, and gives people an idea who you were with. I'll just one last question before we wind up is with this being a European Union initiative, do you have to report back to Brussels on this?
I don't. I think they do. But the people from the European Union were also present on the event.
Yeah.
And they were very happy with the event.
Have you learned any Philippine words? Like, can you say goodbye?
Actually, no.
Come on, Jinx. So you can say goodbye in your native language instead.
In my language?
Yeah.
That will be goedendag en tot de volgende keer.
Very nice. See you later.
Bye-bye. Ow, I just fell down the stairs.
Please hang up and try again.